When the founders met here in Philadelphia in 1787 to draft a new constitution, they had a lot on their minds. The original constitution, known as the Articles of Confederation, well, it had proven to be a flawed compromise. It had created a national government too weak to hold the country together after the war. So the founders faced an immense challenge: design a national government strong enough to unite the 13 states without trampling democratic freedom. Nothing like this has ever been tried before, and it doesn't appear that history is on their side. The founders looked for political wisdom wherever they could find it. They studied the ancient Greeks. You remember the Greeks? They are the first to come up with the idea that power, or kratos, should be given to the people, the demos. They called it demokratia, democracy. But Greek democracy collapsed. It collapsed into chaos and to civil war. It was a tragedy to be avoided. Then there's the example of ancient Rome. Rome had a republic. They had magistrates sharing power with the Senate, and it lasted an astonishing 500 years. By the time Cicero, Rome's greatest statesman, appears on the scene in the century before Christ, the age of the Caesars is upon them. The decline of Rome's political institutions, it had been raging for many years. The ancient city of Rome, by the way, a population of about 1 million people, everybody's complaining about the traffic, so some things never change. The point is, Cicero is calling out Rome's political leaders because of their corruption, their abuse of power.
Our generation, after inheriting our political organization like a magnificent picture now fading with age, did not even bother to ensure that it retained its basic form, and of this great tragedy, we are not only bound to give a description, we must somehow defend ourselves, as if we were arraigned on a capital charge. Cicero.
Well, you can understand why this kind of talk would put Cicero at odds with the establishment. Things are going to end badly for him, and for Rome. But the point is, the American founders, they know this history. They've studied it. They've learned from it. They know that the odds of success are stacked against them, but they're determined. And so the 55 delegates representing the 13 states, they meet here in Philadelphia, 1787. They're a pretty mixed bag. You got merchants, farmers, bankers, lawyers, and patriots. About a third of them had fought in the Revolutionary War. Some of them still carry the scars from the wounds that they had received in battle. So they've got skin in the game. They want a constitution that can weather the storms of ambition and division and somehow preserve order and freedom. But how? How are they going to do it?
Strait is the gate, and narrow is the way that leads to liberty, and few nations, if any, have found it. John Adams.
There's the incredibly explosive issue of the power of the national government. Many of the delegates, they are terrified at the prospect of creating a central government that could dominate, intimidate, or assimilate the states. So they design a federal system. That means political power is divided. It's shared between the national government and the states. But the states get preference because they're closest to the people. They hold on to their sovereignty and independence. So the Constitution's got a very clear and unambiguous message to the federal government. Stay in your lane. Well, the delegates in Philadelphia face another massive challenge: the political punch of the states in this new federal system. The larger and more populous states like New York, they'd like a little more clout in the Congress. The smaller states like Rhode Island, they'd like equal representation. What are you going to do? Devise a two-chamber legislative body in this Congress. Yes, 2 chambers. In the Senate, you get 2 senators per state. In the House of Representatives, equal representation based on population. Everybody loves this idea. It'll be known as the Great Compromise. Yes, a compromise for the sake of the common good, for the sake of the Republic. This is a crucial step in overcoming political divisions and giving everybody a stake in the success of this new Constitution.
The plant of liberty is of so tender a nature that it cannot thrive long in the neighborhood of slavery. Benjamin Rush.
The most difficult and, frankly, the most painful problem at the convention is the issue of slavery. The census of 1790, they counted about 4 million Americans. 700,000 of them are slaves. So this is a deeply ingrained institution. But the American Revolution, it begins to change all of that. Think about it. The language and the logic of the Revolution, with its calls for human freedom, it puts the advocates of slavery on the defensive. Some of the northern states, they're already moving to abolish the institution. Most of the delegates would like to put it on the road to extinction. Nobody has a good word to say about it at the convention, but they don't take the bold step of abolishing the institution. Why? Everyone at the convention knows if they put an end to slavery, it'll put an end to the convention. The southern states, so heavily reliant on slave labor, they would never ratify the Constitution. So the country would be hopelessly divided. You'd have no constitution, no national government, a nation vulnerable to foreign invasion. And so the American founders, they evade this great moral question, and that decision is going to haunt them and their children and their children's children. On top of all these other challenges, one of the great worries of the founders was the problem of factions. These are political groups with very narrow interests, and they don't really care how their political demands affect the rest of the country. Today we call this tribalism. Your tribe comes first, everybody else pays the price. James Madison called the threat of factions the mortal disease of popular government, and you can understand why. So what's the solution to this problem? Create in the Constitution a separation of powers. The separation of powers. 3 branches of government: executive, legislative, and judicial. Each has a set of limited and clearly defined powers. This, the founders believed, was the best way to overcome the problem of factions and still protect individual rights and freedoms. Well, once again, everybody loves this idea, but there's a catch. Some of the states approved the Constitution on the condition that it immediately be improved or amended. They still worry about government overstepping its bounds. They want a Declaration of Rights. So John Hancock, when he's not practicing his penmanship, he drafts the initial version of amendments, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. It's a brilliant compromise. It'll also be an inspiration to democratic movements around the world. It is an absolutely astonishing achievement. We've got a written constitution establishing a democratic republic spread out across a vast territory. This is a new idea in the history of ideas, a political community based not on ethnicity, race, or religion. Instead, it's based on a set of ideas, on a creed. No, not Apollo Creed, on the American creed, a belief in human equality and human freedom. This has never been tried before, and the American founders know it. They call it a novus ordo seclorum, a new order for the ages. That's a line from Virgil, author of the Aeneid, the founding myth of ancient Rome. Yes, something new has appeared on the world stage. When the delegates met during that hot summer in Philadelphia, they managed to keep their proceedings secret. Nobody leaked to the press. And yet there's intense national interest in what's going on behind closed doors. On the last day of the convention, a crowd gathers. They want to know, what kind of government are we going to get? Is it going to be a democracy, a constitutional monarchy, or something else? Well, when the elder statesman Ben Franklin emerges, somebody in the crowd stops him. Mr. Franklin, what do we have? A republic, if you can keep it. And this brings us back to Cicero. Cicero's long struggle to preserve Rome's republic, it comes to an end. December 7th, 43 BC. Remember, Cicero had been a severe critic of what Rome had become, and the authorities, they've had enough. So soldiers sent by Mark Antony, they arrive at his seaside villa in Formia in Italy. As the assassins approach with swords drawn, Cicero reportedly displayed a kind of stoic defiance. There is nothing proper about what you're going to do, soldier, he says, but try to kill me properly. They cut his throat. For all practical purposes, when Cicero fell, the Republic fell with him. The founders knew what they were doing in Philadelphia. They understood the enormity of the task. They studied history in order to defy history. The Americans won their freedom with the Revolution. They secured it with the Constitution. But could they enlarge their vision of freedom, make it more generous, and preserve it over the long haul? Abraham Lincoln warned that the greatest threat to democracy came not from a foreign invader, it came from within. If the American people failed to uphold the principles of the Declaration and the Constitution. As a nation of free men, Lincoln said, we must live through time or die by suicide. The founders gave us a republic, if we can keep it.